Welcome to Living Chassidus. Together, let's live the Chassidus we learn.
Morning, everybody. Welcome to Chassidus in the morning. 15 minutes to Mitzvah Hashem, change our lives. I'm going to start by giving tzedakah. Gedel tzedakah, shemachar tzedakah ula. Mitzvah Hashem with the tzedakah should be, everyone should be healthy, safe. The Eretz Yisroel, the soldiers especially, and the hostages especially, should all be safe and come home to their families peacefully. We are going to daven for all the hostages and the soldiers, specifically for Yosef Yitzchak ben Simcha. And for today, we're going to focus on Ruma ben Taama. It should be only good and safe and healthy for Ruma and Taama. Okay. So, Parak base in Maamer Yud, page 161. Essentially, yesterday we're talking about that there's the ratzon that Hashem has an inner ratzon for us, and we said the example, we gave the story of essentially the relationship with the father and with a parent and a child. Let's say it's a very deep one, whereas in this level of makif, let's say that we talk about how Rishayim receive, or Ovdei Kechab Mazalis, or idol worshippers receive. So on one hand they receive, but it's not a real connection. And this is what we're going to discuss today in more detail. And in general, this is something else very interesting to notice, that when you learn Chassidus, a lot of times what Chassidus does, takes an idea and explains it to you one way, and then it focuses in to that idea more and realizes there's different levels in that idea. So until now, sort of, we talked about there's an idea called makif, ratzon. It's one level, ratzon, Hashem's desire, Hashem's will. We all have a ratzon. It's a very deep level. It's above our chachma, above our thoughts, above our intellect. It's like this inner desire. So we talked about that in that level, or that inner desire of Hashem. It's so high, it's so above, like ratzon. It's like a keser, it's a crown, which is above us. It's not part of us. So and therefore, even the Rishayim can receive. It's like sort of at such a high level, it doesn't care. And now we're going to discuss different levels of this higher level. And this is sort of like I said, that and this is the beauty of Chassidus when you learn something. And people sometimes get confused about this. I thought we said this, but now we're saying this. It's called zooming in. When you look at something from afar, look at a house from afar. It's like they said, the famous story, not so famous, but the Frierdiker Rebbe was in Germany, I think. And so he met a delegation of Yidden that were like, Yakisha Jews. They didn't, Chassidus never came to them. So they were wondering, what's this Chassidus thing? So he said to them, he gave a mashal. They were sitting in a fancy hotel lobby. So he said, when you look over there on that beam or whatever, the pole that was decorated very fancy, what do you see? He says, we see a nice pole. So he goes, come. And they walked towards it and they got very close to it. And he goes, now, what do you see? And they say, there's all these intricate details and there's all these designs. It looks very beautiful. So he said, that's exactly what Chassidus is. Chassidus is taking the things that you already see, but really shining light onto it. Like a simple example of being serving Hashem b'simcha. It's not a chiddush of Chassidus. Chassidus didn't make up this new mitzvah of serving Hashem b'simcha. It's a mitzvah. It's a Torah. Chassidus brought it to light as like a foundation. And sort of, this is what we're saying, that when we're learning here, we're going to zoom in on it to see it more deeply. When you see it from a distance, it looks like one thing, but when you focus in, you actually see two things. And another example, simple example, they talk about in the computers, and I think it's with everything. Like everything is made up of energy or matter. Like a computer, the whole screen, everything you see is made up of ones and twos, or zeros and ones. Zeros and ones. And so he said, what do you mean? I don't see zeros and ones. But when you zoom in, close enough, you see it. And this is sort of what Chassidus is doing. Let's see. Parak base. And in truth, Hashem's inner, the pnimius, the inner, and the essence of Hashem's infinite light, in truth, in the deepest levels, the deeper levels of Hashem, the main thing that he wants is a year that does Torah mitzvahs. Omash is parallel. But 1 second, we said before, in Maamer test, Parak Gimel, That on this level of makif, that's above and beyond, everyone can receive. For the makif is such a high level, it's sort of like ants across the street. Do I care about what happens to ants across the streets? Well, let's say I want to check out some food. You think I'm thinking about which ant's going to receive what? It's so insignificant, and this is that level of makif. It's so high that a yid and a goy are insignificant. Not a goy, a yid and a ovid kechavim, a person that does idol worship. So the gamma klippa is sitracha. Even the klippa and sitracha, even things that are against whatever, like even the ant that would be against what I stand for, I wouldn't care. But what the Rashab is saying, that really this is the level of chitzenius makif. This is the external part of makif. So before we talked about makif as a whole, and now we're analyzing in makif, in this level that Hashem surrounds, doesn't internalize, doesn't connect. It's, so to speak, a superficial, not a good word for it, but it's distant from us. So on that level, even on that level, there's two levels in there. There's the chitzenius, so the real external part of it. So over there, it doesn't really matter. But the inner desire of makif, because makif, like we said, is like a desire, an inner desire. So the inner desire is let's say we want to have a house. So the house, the way the house looks, makes a difference. It's not the desire is formulated in details. It's not when I have a desire for a house, so I have a desire that the structure should be built in this way. It's more of a makif. Just I have a desire for a house, but together with that, there's also a way I want the house to be. I want like the way to look, that feel that a house gives. So that's what we're saying. In makif, there's a makif that it's totally above it, not in details, and therefore even the Rishonim can get, Rishonim can get. But then there's a level of makif that he actually does care about what happens, which is called pnimis makif. Pnimis makif shah makavana shia kima Torah mitzvahs dafka. But in pnimis makif, then Hashem has a desire for Torah mitzvahs. And that's what we're seeing here. There's two levels in makif. Before we talk about makif for one thing, now we're showing when you analyze it, there's actually two levels in makif. And he explains it. Here's the Medrash Rabbah explains in the Medrash in Bereshis, Parsha Beis. So what does it say? First pasuk, and the land was empty and void. So my same shorashayim. This is the actions of the Rishayim. Vayemer Elikim. And Hashem said, "Here should be light." And so when the world was empty and void, this was what the Rishayim were doing. And when Hashem says it should be light, this was the action of tzaddikim. And what does Hashem say? Brings down in the Medrash, I don't know, Hashem says, puts in such a high level, which one I desire, like the example of the ants across the street. Now ask me, which one do I care about more? I don't know. I don't know if I desire the one ant versus the other ant. The person that does mitzvahs, or the person that does averis. He shows distance from it. He doesn't know which one he cares for. Doesn't really like. Once that, I got to think about these ants. Like, do I really care about these things? But but then, since that it writes later on in the parsha, that Hashem saw the light, that he was good. So what does that show? So Hashem is saying that he realizes I enjoy the actions of the tzaddikim, and I don't enjoy the actions of the Rishayim. Which in simple terms is a beautiful idea, because we're showing that there's a level of Hashem that is above and beyond our actions. That our action doesn't really matter. He doesn't even to the extent that he doesn't know which one he prefers, the Torah mitzvahs or the averis. But it's so irrelevant. Like the example of the ants. One ant might be doing something really good. One ant might be doing something really bad. You ask me, which one do I care about? Well, I don't know. I don't care. But in the end, even on that level that Hashem doesn't need to care, it's so above and beyond caring, he sees the Yar Elokim is the Erki Tov, he sees the light that it's good, and he realizes that, hey, that ant over there, it's actually doing something very good, and that's us. When we determine mitzvahs, he's like, wow, that's what I want. So now let's analyze this a little bit. That's the medrash. So v'yadua, so it's known, the chayf, it's hu, primus aratzah, and Hashem desires, he says, Eini there, so Hashem says, have a ma'aseh shel tzadikim chafetz. Hashem desires the action of tzadikim. What does it mean? Desires, that's pnimis aratzah, that's his inner aratzah, inner desire. Uvechinas pnimis aratzah, and zhu bechinas pnimi hamakif chafetz v'ma'aseh shel tzadikim. And this inner desire, on that level, that on that level, on one hand, we're insignificant, and what a Rasha does and a tzaddik does, they're insignificant. But together with that, even though you're not such a high level that we're insignificant, still there he wants your actions. Davka. Umisham nimshach sheresh hamshach b'chinas pnimis. And from there it draws down Hashem's inner desire. Shehu b'chinas seder shtashlus, which is seder shtashlus, which is expressing itself through seder shtashlus. Meaning seder shtashlus is source. Even though before we talked about, until now, we sort of said the seder shtashlus, which is Hashem in nature, and there's a whole chain-like descent, there's an order, and they gave 4 reasons why it has to be this way, and it's a light and a keli, it's very tailored, that it's Hashem sitting there, in the example of the ants, walking across the street. I'm looking at the ants, I'm analyzing it, I'm trying to figure out which one is better, which one is worse, which one deserves, which one doesn't deserve, and then in that place, the ants take up space. But with the source for that is coming from makif, the pnimis makif, the pnimis aratzin. That my inner desire, even when I'm across the street over here, that's totally insignificant. I say, you know what? I want that ant. I want to see the ants doing good things. So then it expresses itself in me going outside of my house and going down to the street and looking at the ants and analyzing them. Now the question is, how can we say above seder shtashlus, above nature, is expressing itself within, is coming down all the way to be the source for nature? They're 2 separate things. Seemingly they don't come together. So the answer is it's because this is really even coming from even a higher level, from the makif, from the higher makif. It's the inner level of makif, the inner desire, the true inner desire. And therefore, the higher it is, the lower it can become. And this is sort of like a simple example of it is like in our generation. And on one hand, we're in a lower generation in our sensitivity to things. But on the other hand, because of that, we're able to receive more, because of that lack of sensitivity. Because if we were sensitive, we wouldn't be able to receive so much. And that's why in our physical world has a much deeper level of godliness than than higher worlds than us. For the simple reason that they wouldn't be able to withstand the amount of revelation that we get. Because we have a closeness, we have physicality, we have a feeling of separateness. So therefore, Hashem can give us more, because we're not going to lose ourselves, go out of existence. Yeah, let's try to go a little bit more. Well, so page 163. So according to this, move on. The Neshamas Yisroel, the Al Neshamas, Shemekablim al Yidei Mitzvahs, that we receive to do mitzvahs b'chinas pnimi, Hashem's inner light, inner desire, the seder shtashlus of the orderly, in nature type of revelation. But it's source, even though we're getting it through the seder shtashlus, which is this organized fashion, which you said before, that is very meduyek, it's very exact, and what we do makes a very big difference, and we're deserving, not deserving. Even though until now, we felt like that was a lower level, and really the Rishonim can get from a makif, that doesn't even matter what they do. What we're showing is that the inner source for what we get through the seder shtashlus is actually higher from that level of makif. So you have 3 levels essentially. You have in makif, there's 2 levels. You have the makif, the higher, the pnimis makif, which is Hashem's inner desire for for the Ma'aseh Tzadikim. Then there's the Klippus Acha, which is Chitenis Amakif, which doesn't really matter on that level and gives to everyone. And then there is Seder Ishtalshalos. But the Seder Ishtalshalos, which is with the orderly way that we receive, which we before Asana, it's not as good as what the Rishaim and Klippus Acha get. Its sauce is on a higher level than them. Yeah, and it's infinitely greater. So in the first two levels, the two levels of Makiv, the Pnimis of Makiv, the inner desire, the inner Ratzah, and the inner will that Hashem has is which is the source for the Seder Shtashos, and ultimately what we get is way higher than the Chitzenis and the external level, which the Klippus Achra and the Rishaim get. Visar Hamayla Bezel. I think we'll stop here, and tomorrow we'll finish off this parak. I think we'll do it that way, be a little bit better. So, in summary, it was a little bit deep, but in summary, what we're saying is that in Makif, we learned today is that in Makif, in Hashem's inner desire, in Hashem's Ratzah, in His desire, there's two levels now we showed, and this is not something new that we like. Chassidus has in this first time Chassidus talking about. Chassidus talks about this a lot. But again, like I said to you in the beginning, there's focusing from the outside and then zooming in. When you zoom in, you realize there's two levels of Makif. And what we're saying is that through the outer mitzvah, he's tapping into a deeper level of Makif than what the Rishaim and Klippus Acha receive. So on the external level, it's like the example of the story that I gave. When the father tells his son, listen, my new wife doesn't want you in the house, I'm going to give you credit cards and you can live the life. I'll give you an apartment. You're a bachelor, you're a single 20, you're 18. You live the life, go whatever you want. So the scene that looks very nice. But the inner desire of the child and the parent really, it's not a good example 100% in the parent example, in parent part of it, but the point of the example is that really the inner desire that we have is to be connected to Hashem, what Hashem has connected to us. So why not you see the Yishar and they get all these things? But they have no relationship. What would you rather, the relationship with Hashem or all the benefits that Hashem has, that He can give you everything? So b'chitzeni, you might say, oh, you know what? Let me give you everything. I'll have good. Like the people that choose all these other ministers. But the wise one realizes, no, I want to be connected to Hashem. I want to connect to the King. And what we have to realize, and this is sort of a sensitivity, that if I have everything in my life, begashmis, but I have no ruach, there's no connection to my neshama, is that good? Now we might say, yeah, of course it's good. But if we're honest with ourselves, we might say, what do you mean? But life would be so good, it'd be so easy. I'd have a big house, I'd have all this money, I could do whatever I want, I could travel whenever I want, I could buy whatever I want for my kids, and all these good things. But we have to realize, we have to bring with ourselves, realize 1 second, but I'll miss everything. Life without Torah mitzvah, without Hashem is nothing. And this is sort of what we're talking about. And ultimately, that is a high level, even though sometimes I don't look at it, but it really is. To be continued tomorrow. Have a great, great day.